So Mark Lamont Hill was fired by CNN. He was a CNN contributor. I believe he was a paid contributor who was on contract, to my understanding of it. He would appear on CNN a lot. He's somebody who is a pretty solid left winger, is what it seems like to me. And he actually got fired because of a speech he gave at the United Nations. Now, he gave a speech at the United Nations basically calling for a one-state solution in which there are many different proposed solutions. There's the one state, there's the two state, and there's even the 0 and 3 and 4. They get a little crazy. But the one state is basically like, okay, it's not really realistic to have a two-state solution, and so let's just have a one-state solution where it's Israel, and then Palestinians are treated equally under the law and actually legitimately treated in there. And there are actual, not being massive human rights violations and things like that we see in Gaza and in the areas where there are settlements currently. So Mark Lamont Hill did this very basic sort of thing. Now, he used the phrase "from the river to the sea." Now, I guess that's a phrase that's used by people who want to eradicate Israel. But what he meant by that is he meant that he wanted the entire nation of Israel to be a free nation for all of its people. All the people who are residing in Israel should be free, that including Palestinians. Now, Ben Shapiro is somebody who is supposed to be a free speech guy, right? He's supposed to be the guy who is all about free speech. He's the one who says that, I think he's also of the position that certain firings aren't right and things like that, and that, he's obviously somebody who's an FSW, supposedly anyways, a free speech warrior. And the free speech thing always, unfortunately, ends up being a partisan issue, which is unfortunate because it really doesn't need to be. I don't think it should be, but I don't think it should be partisan. I think that it should be something that, we all sort of stand for. But it's inevitable every time this happens. I mean, you'll always tell based on the person, whoever comes out and says something, it's going to depend upon who is the case of free speech at hand. And there's these people like Dave Rubin. I don't know if Dave Rubin's talked about this. I haven't seen anything from him. But this is always something that is that's on the top list of the right, and it's something that I don't think needs to be in terms of we should all be advocating for free speech. Now, Ben Shapiro is going to prove to be a massive, unbelievably massive hypocrite here. It's going to get really bad. Check it out.
My basic rule is this. Private companies, first of all, have a right to do whatever they want. Number two, if you threaten the brand of the company has a responsibility to its shareholders to take you out. Number three, the question is whether a new piece of information has been emergent or whether this is just ginned up outrage about a piece of old Twittery. Okay, Mark Lamont Hill did something new. We knew that Mark Lamont Hill did all this stuff years ago. If, for example, people said, Mark Lamont Hill back in 2008 defended Louis Farrakhan, he should be fired. I'd be like, probably not. Probably not. Now, I don't like Mark Lamont Hill. I think he's terrible, but probably not. But this is a new thing that he did, a new piece of information. So CNN not only had every right to fire him, this was a piece of open anti-Semitism.
So, as you guys just saw there, of course, Ben Shapiro proves to be a massive hypocrite once again. He is totally okay with the firing of Mark Lamont Hill due to these comments. Now, we also know that Ben Shapiro is a horrible human being on pretty much all accounts. He's the guy who said that, he said that Israelis like to build, Arabs like to bomb crap and live in open sewage. Hashtag settlements rock. So he's got a sort of Israeli supremacy complex, and he's also got this inner feeling of, fuck it, let's just break international law just because Israelis like to build. Duh. So it's very obvious, right? It's embarrassing, man. And on the video, it looked like there was backlash, but he also made a comment about Roseanne that I don't think that his fans took too kindly to. So I don't know whether or not his fans actually were pissed off about this, because it usually ends up being they have these cultish followings who sort of just back them regardless of what they actually say. That's pretty damn common. So I don't really know. But nonetheless, this ends up being problematic because Mark Lamont Hill should not have been fired for this. We have a big time issue in the United States in which basically anything that is critical of Israel, any comments or statements that are critical of Israel is somehow looked at as anti-Semitism. And this is very unfortunate. And this doesn't just happen in the United States. Like in the UK, Jeremy Corbyn was calling out the banks, and some idiots were trying to smear him and say that he was an anti-Semite for that. Like, what? What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. Not even in the slightest. Not even close. So this guy who's supposed to be the free speech guy is clearly not the free speech guy. And he's just a massive hypocrite. The one that really surprised me was where the Constitution, he said that he's a constitutional conservative, but he's down to, I don't know if he wants to go through the process of replacing the 14th Amendment, amending the 14th Amendment, or if he just wants the courts to change his mind on it. But that was really ridiculous. But Benjamin Netanyahu is a really big D-bag. I hate Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu is actually just the Israeli Trump. That's what he is. And it's crazy because, as I had explained before, like 4, 5, 6 months ago, was that Benjamin Netanyahu was actually, he had charges recommended against him by the Israeli police of textbook corruption charges. It's crazy. So this is insane. This just came out yesterday, okay? It says Israeli police recommend indicting Netanyahu in 3rd corruption allegations this year. 3 of them, guys. Not 1, not 2, but 3 corruption allegations, okay? Now, here's what the NPR says. They say, he is one of President Trump's closest allies and on the way to becoming the longest-serving prime minister in his country's history. But after almost a decade in power, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is battling a series of corruption allegations. On Sunday, Israeli police recommended that Netanyahu be indicted for receiving bribes and other criminal charges, the 3rd and most severe corruption case he has faced this year. He denies wrongdoing and accuses the police of a witch hunt. 3 recommendations of corruption charges. These are very textbook corruption charges, by the way. You're calling that a witch hunt. There are 3 of them being recommended against you, and you have the audacity, the gall, to call it a witch hunt. He's exactly the Israeli Trump. He calls the media fake news. He's a piece of human garbage. Okay, he's a complete piece of human trash. Okay, he's a total piece of garbage. Now, it says, it is now up to Israel's Attorney General to decide whether he should be indicted. Here's what you need to know about the allegation and how they could affect Netanyahu's grip on power. So, I'm going to explain what the allegations against Netanyahu are this time. It says, police say Netanyahu had a, quote, bribery relationship with Shaul Elovitch, the controlling shareholder of Israeli telecommunications company Bezek. They say Netanyahu advanced regulation favoring Elovitch, apparently concerning the merger of 2 telecom companies that netted him millions of dollars. In exchange, from 2012 to 2017, police say, Netanyahu and his associates dictated content on the company's news website, Walla News, placing flattering photos and articles and removing articles that were critical of Netanyahu and his family, while also getting involved in the hiring of editors and reporters. The police investigation into this case followed a 2015 investigative report by Israeli reporter G.D. Weitz in the newspaper Haaretz. Former editors and reporters at Walla News spoke to the Israeli investigative TV program Hamakor about interference in their coverage. Avner, head of the news desk from 2011 to 2013, said it began when bosses instructed editors to remove a story about poverty in Israel, in which the headline included a quote from an opposition lawmaker, quote, Netanyahu is blind to the growing poverty. Avi Al-Khalai, former chief editor of the site from 2015 to 2016, said, quote, there was an attempt to paint all that had to do with the prime minister's household in a positive light and not negative. This is something that is really serious. These are clean-cut, direct corruption charges against this man. 3 of them. Not 1, not 2, but 3 now. And I wouldn't be surprised if there end up being more. And they're strikingly similar to this one. I believe the last one was similar to this as well. There was someone who I believe had some business who donated him a shit ton of money, and then he would give him gifts and giving him back money and deregulating and giving him money. It's fucking ridiculous, dude. It's insane. Okay, textbook corruption. You're talking about, people on the right who supposedly see, things like Stalin and things like that as the worst. This is one of the main tactics where you're just straight up brainwashing the media by straight up taking out articles. Guys, this guy was taking out articles because of Netanyahu. Are you kidding me right now? That's insane. And they did it because there was a favorable telecom merger to him. And so they had a little exchange. Hey, help me out with this little telecom merger. And in exchange, what I'll do is I'll take down articles that are critical of you. What? You call that a democracy? That's what Israel considers a democracy? We always talk about, oh yeah, Israel is a real democracy. They have their own Supreme Court. They have separation of powers. Yeah, when the police have recommended 3 indictments and jack shit has happened, what a great democracy that is. Textbook corruption. Indictments recommended on 3 occasions and nothing so far. Nothing has happened. It also talks about how serious the allegations are. It says, this is the 3rd set of corruption charges police have recommended against Netanyahu this year. And analysts say is the most serious because of the large regulatory favors allegedly given to the telecom shareholder. Netanyahu and his wife are accused of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust in the case, dubbed by police as Case 4000. In February, this is February, okay? This is right now, it's December. This is February we're talking about now. It says in February, police recommended he be indicted for bribery, fraud, and breach of trust in 2 other cases. So what are you going to do, Israel? People of Israel, what are you going to do? Because the polls don't really indicate much to put enough pressure on Netanyahu to take him out. They don't. They don't put enough pressure on him to step down or feel more pressure. Because I believe like the polls, if they're not saying that they would support Netanyahu anyways, it's close, which is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. From a supposed democracy, which is supposed to be one that's really looked up towards, where you're literally corrupt as hell. You did a favor to a telecom giant by having a nice merger for them, allowing a nice merger. And in exchange, in return, you're taking down news articles that are critical. That's some dictatorial stuff. That's not democracy. I'm sorry. Being textbookly corrupt, not representing the people by allowing this telecom merger because it personally benefits you. And then stifling critique and criticism. That's not democracy. Are you kidding me? That's democracy to you? What measure of democracy is that? So let's see something happen to this man because that's now 3 indictment allegations. They're recommending charges the Israeli police. This is not some UN, not another nation. This is people in Israel, the police of Israel. So you can't scream anti-Semitism because you don't have a counter. This man is corrupt. Get rid of him immediately.